Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Let's have some fighting words. In this video, I want to talk about Terence Bud Crawford. And if he is to move over to across the street with the PBC and Showtime, what does that look like? Because we know that he's not going to be jumping into a fight with Errol, Spence or Yordenis, Ugas. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, the reports have been coming that there could be Thurman, and Thurman has called out Terence Crawford a few times as of lately. Never once he was champion, which is ironic. You know, when he had all the gold, he wasn't calling out anybody, as a matter of fact. You know, but now that he doesn't have any gold, you know, he has turned into a full-fledged challenger and contender, which is good. I mean, you know, don't lose the fire, which clearly he hasn't, you know, if he's calling out the top guys. What does that look like? You know, I was thinking about this fight, and honestly, let's just say, you know, this comes to contract, to paper. What's the one thing I would like to see other than Terence Crawford facing off against Errol Spence? Terence Crawford facing off against Keith Thurman one time. Now, I'm not saying Keith Thurman looked absolutely amazing, you know, when he fought a guy who was a 140-pound champion. I'm not saying that. I'm not gonna, you know, burials. He didn't look amazing, but he didn't look bad either. You know, he didn't look bad. He didn't look like the Keith Thurman that fought Danny Garcia, but he didn't look bad at all. I mean, physically, he looked like he really put in the time. He really dedicated himself, and he really rebuilt himself back up. And he was fighting as such. I mean, there were times where he was holding his ground, and, you know, Keith being Keith will jump on that bicycle from time to time, you know, to find a better position. And listen, if you got legs, use them. You know, not many boxers know how to use the ring the right way. So no knock on that. But, you know, as I'm sitting here thinking about this potential matchup, I'm thinking, well, how does it look? I'm not really sure, because I know that Keith Thurman has a much broader boxing brain than people give him credit for. The dude is an analyst, so it's not like he doesn't know how to dissect a fighter or to really pick out what someone is doing well as opposed to what someone isn't doing well. Now, the question is, could he exploit it? I think the biggest thing that we think about, if we think about a Keith Thurman matchup against Terence Bud Crawford, would be Crawford at times has shown to be a little chinny. Okay. I will say he has not shown to be chinny at 147. You know, so, but he has shown that he can be a little chinny. Keith Thurman has not shown that he can be chinny. I mean, he was taking bombs from Danny Garcia and giving them right back. So I don't really know about that, but I would say, you know, this would be a thinking man's boxing match. I think when you look at the way Keith Thurman fights, everybody thinks it would just be a flat-out banger. And Terence Bud Crawford is no stranger to banging it out. I personally don't like when he bangs it out because he is questionably chinny. So I don't think it's in his best interest. I've never thought it was in his best interest. I think his strong suit is thinking. I think his strong suit is boxing. I think his strong suit is hitting without getting hit. I think his strong suit is distance, which again brings me to another point. This would be a great matchup because you're talking about two guys who are not going to be up close on each other. They're going to fight at a distance. They're going to fight at a distance, and they're going to fight from angles, which is going to be really, you know, interesting, to be honest with you. The whole matchup is just going to be interesting. Now, my one question is what the speed will be. Terence Crawford is not the fastest fighter, and I don't mean in terms of speed. I just mean in terms of the pace of the fight. He prefers a slower pace, while Keith Thurman, he's more of like a skirmish type fighter. You know, he'll come in and and then he'll get back out. He'll skate back out, and then he'll just keep doing that. So it's like I said, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting, to see the contrast and to see which one will play out, which one will not play out, win out, because ultimately somebody has to lose, just like somebody has to win. So whoever wins, clearly that game plan was superior. That it's going to be superior. So you got to think, okay, I think the slower pace of Terence Crawford would definitely also work in the favor of Keith Thurman, because it would allow Keith Thurman to do what he does best, and that's lunge in, do what he has to do, and then skid out the other way. So it would come to a thing of Terence Crawford being ready to fight in skirmishes, because you're not going to have a full-on battle. You're just going to bang, 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 and then you're both going to separate. And then you're going to come together again, and you're going to separate. And it will literally be that over and over and over again, which is fine with me, because you're technically maximizing the action, and you're maximizing your energy. You're preserving and maximizing your energy. Because if you just got two guys who just stand there and they do what they do, well, then after a while, it just becomes a game of nutrition, and my heart versus your heart, my grit versus your grit. But if you have two guys who do an exchange and then they back off, they do an exchange and they back off, they do a little circle and then they do another exchange. Well, they're preserving their energy as well. So every time they do an exchange, it's not going to be some dried out, exchange, because they backed away, and now they've had time to take a breath and figure, all right, what's my next point of entry? So I think like I said, this is definitely a thinking man's fight, and it would be interesting, because the reality is, if Terence Crawford were to fight Errol Spence, it's not necessarily going to be that. It's going to be, can Terence Crawford keep up with the work rate of Errol Spence? That's really what the story and the narrative is going to be. Like, it's not the thing of Terence Crawford's brain. It's the thing of, can he keep up with the amount of punches that Errol Spence can throw on around? The relentlessness of Errol Spence? Can he truly keep up with that? Because when I match those two together, that's what I'm constantly thinking. I'm like, I know you can win, but my question is, can you keep up with his work rate? That's my question. And he's going to be bigger than you. So that means he's not going to let you get any rest. He's not going to let you get any space. And you're going to look for space. You're definitely going to look for space. Now, the question is, can you create the space? Can you make him back up? Errol isn't the best fighter when he's backing up, because he hardly ever backs up. So Terence Crawford is a great fighter backing up, especially moving up in weight. He's had to be a great fighter backing up, because there are times when you're fighting a bigger guy, and now you need to back up. Well, like I said, the Keith Thurman fight is going to be a little different. It's definitely going to be a lot more movement, a lot more circular movement. If you have the Terence Crawford and he's going against like Errol Spence, the move is going to be like this. But if Terence Crawford were to face Keith Thurman, the movement's going to be like this. That's going to be different. So there's a lot of factors to play into it. Yes, the power is always one, and it's always a factor. However, one time hasn't been one time in some time. So I don't really know about that, but it's always possible. Anybody can get clipped at any given time. So you do have to factor it in. But the smarts, and the reality is, Terence Crawford, I always say, is not the hardest hitter in the world, but he's so precise, and he knows when to hit you. He can get you out of there because he's such a precise puncher. Because he has great boxing instincts. He can fight. He fights very instinctively. Some people have to think about what they're going to do, and some people could just be caught up in a movement or in a situation and just do something. Some people have to think, I got to step back, I got to throw the hook. Terence Crawford could just step back and throw the hook. He's not going to think about it. He could just do it. And to his credit, I believe Keith Thurman can do the same thing. But I believe if it would serve him correctly if Keith Thurman were not to come in and be some bull in there. And I feel like that's what he would do. And in being the bull, I think he would play into the hands of Terence Bud Crawford. It doesn't work really well when you're a bull against Bud. He would prefer you be the bull. He would prefer to be the El Matador and, just lead you into something. And you're going to run into something because he's great at that. He's great at setting traps. And, I mean, he hasn't failed as of lately, so there's no sense in me thinking that he would fail against Keith Thurman. But then again, like I said, Keith Thurman does have a boxing brain. He's one of the fighters who knows when to back away. The song, you got to know when to hold him, you got to know when to fold him, you got to know when to back down, and you got to know when to run. Keith Thurman understands that. He understands every lyric in that song. And there's no shame in backing off. Even when you hit as hard as Keith Thurman, there's no shame in backing off. It's called being smart, people. No shame in that. Sometimes you have to back off and say, all right, well, I can't go through that door. I got to go through the side window. No shame in that. No shame in that at all. So either way, I look forward to this fight. And I hope that, like I said earlier, it hits some paper. I hope pens are in people's hands and they sign. And listen, that'll give Bud something to do while, by that time, I mean, Errol Spence will probably be, healing up from the Ugas fight. Or Ugas will be healing up. Again, I have to keep, mentioning him because, we often talk about this up-and-coming bout as if Ugas is not a factor, when in fact he is. So you got to keep that in mind. But that's my video. You tell me your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments down below. As always, please like my videos. Please share these videos. And also, please subscribe to my channel.